great to see you again.
Likewise.
First of all, address the elephant in the room. You get to stroke Matt Smith's hair and call it work. How much fun is it getting the dysfunctional chemistry of this couple right? Because the whole story revolves around it.
It really breaks my heart because I think that they both so want to be seen and understood, but they can't show themselves at all. So it was the moments where they almost connected but didn't that we really wanted to focus on, and that's kind of where the tragedy really lay for me. I was very lucky to be doing it with Matt because he's just a wonderful actor.
And the feeling of the film is, whilst it's held out in a wide open, wonderful countryside, it's very claustrophobic in many places. So obviously you've both come off doing mega series and you're back on the stage next week.
Yes.
So where does this fit in your method and how you approach it?
I really love working with writer-directors. I think that creates a really kind of specific type of kind of working relationship, and it's an interesting question. I don't know how to quite answer it, but I will say that there's something very special that comes from doing an independent film with a writer-director, because you have a lot of fluidity and freedom by the writer-director being there, but also there's confines because it's an independent film. There's only a certain amount of time, and I think that mixture, that alchemy, often creates something really exciting, and also a lot of passion from everyone involved to make it work. Does that answer?
And also the chemistry, talking about alchemy and chemistry, you were born in the land of the Norse gods. You brought up in the land of the Druids. Do you think otherworldly roles like this find you, or do you go out and find them?
Interesting. I think I think they have seemed to just kind of come to me, which I'm like, how funny. I don't know. But I feel so lucky to, first of all, just be in the world of make-believe as an actor, but to be in the world of magic make-believe is something that is super special to me. And I guess, yes, I just grew up reading folk stories, being obsessed with fairies and magic, loving the Mabinogi, and I guess it's shaped me more than I realised. Yeah.
And also you've got effectively 3 babies coming out at once. You've got Rings of Power, you've got this coming out, and then you're on stage next week. I hate to ask you to pick a favourite child, but what's your love at this moment in time?
Well, right now it's Starve Acre. I'm so excited to be that it's being seen, and that we're here tonight with people in the cinema. But I think what's wonderful about being an actor is that you never know what you're going to be doing, and even I'm doing a theatre, this is a film obviously, but every film is so different to each other, every theatre project is so different to each other that, I don't know, you have to fall in love with everyone. Every job, I feel like, is a little baby of mine. I don't know.
And just quickly, Rings of Power.
Yes.
Looking forward to seeing the whole season 2. Season 3, is any discussion on set about whether you'd want to do that again?
Yes, I think there's more very excited about the thought of going back to Middle Earth. Yeah, love it there.
Fabulous world. Thank you so much for speaking to us, and lovely to see you again.
Thank you for being here.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, you guys!
Hey, that's what they all say.
Hey, you guys!